This week in game development, we go over issues from my first play test, potential fixes for those issues, and how those fixes are intended to be played out. Welcome back to Guys Night Gaming, where we play games and make things. If you don't know, I'm developing my first skirmish game. So hit the subscribe button below to follow the development. Your input's important, and it's very valued here. I need to be able to get that to make changes. So born out of the love I have for Cyberpunk, Magic the Gathering, and so many of the miniature skirmish games out there, I started on a journey about 2 years ago to make something I would love and I think others would love too. I'm in the early stages of development with play testing on the table, and this series will go through the entire journey of the development and then hopefully eventually the launch, covering game updates, additions, changes, and other exciting news about development. This week we're going to go over my first play test and the first few reworks I'm making to the game. So the first issue I ran into while doing the first play test was resolving cards. So I realized I left out a priority order for card play during the playthrough, and it got confusing very fast. I had to come up with some way of creating that order so when we could play, it would help move the play along in an orderly fashion. So with some help from my friend who's very familiar with Magic the Gathering, he suggested I place a priority number on the card, which I thought was a brilliant idea, of course. See, one of the most unique aspects of Net City Runners, I think, is that during play, nobody has to sit around waiting for the other person to take their whole turn. I learned from skirmish games and GMing as well that it can be a downer to just kind of sit around and wait for other players to take their turn. So my goal is to minimize that as much as possible. And when we talk about playing cards in Night City Runners, I'm talking about consideration cards and split-second cards. These cards are played only during certain phases of each turn, with consideration cards being played face down prior to revealing your actions, and split-second cards being played face up after actions are revealed, but before the turn is over. So you can kind of get that back and forth play. What I decided on is to use the card's bandwidth cost to determine the priority of the play. So if the consideration cards are flipped over, one with a bandwidth of 2 and the other with a bandwidth of 4, the card with the higher bandwidth will go first, and card play will continue in that order. So the player with priority will also have priority on split-second cards, and then that will just play in a stacked order, just like Magic the Gathering. The split-second cards will be played on both sides during that turn. They either buff, debuff, or counter the other player's cards. Now, if the bandwidths happen to be the same, then the player who did not have priority last gets priority. If neither player had priority on the previous turn, or if there was no previous turn, like the first turn, then the players would just do a simple D6 roll off. Highest number gets priority. The next thing I wanted to consider looking at was how you play consideration cards. This was brought up by my buddy that was helping me play test. While playing, we thought that maybe it'd be interesting to add some more uniqueness to the play with the consideration cards. Right now, during the consideration phase of play, each player looks through their 5-card hand and can decide if they want to lay a consideration card for that next action, and you'd lay them face down. That would then be revealed when the action starts. Then card play would commence amongst the miniatures actions like attacking or hacking or whatever. So I thought it might create more dynamic play if players are able to lay a consideration card down on any action right away to plan the moves ahead of time, since actions are taken in turns. Another change that was brought up was maybe changing the gang cards some. So currently within the consideration split-second cards, there are gang cards that give a general bonus that anybody can use and a gang-specific bonus if your group is tied to that gang. So I'm making changes to some of those consideration and split second cards labeled as the gang cards to remove that lesser ability, or just keep them in but have it for the whole faction. Make it just strictly for that gang. So this gives the card a uniqueness to further provide each gang with a unique layout and play style. So then you wouldn't have two gangs using the same card pretty much. Finally, saving the biggest for last, I think that will make quite a difference. During our play test, I think we both felt like the movement was a bit slow. It's because I broke the game down into 3 actions: a move action, attack, and a grid action. And with these 3 actions being split among the 3 miniatures, only 1 miniature could move per round, essentially. And we can kind of see how this would be an issue. My initial thought with this was coming from, tabletop RPG perspective, like the thematic thought of each round being 4 to 6 seconds. But that just didn't translate into the game, and it really just slowed it down quite a bit. So my workaround for this rework in the actions was to just remove the move action altogether, keep the attack and grid actions as actions. Now, each miniature will move anytime they perform an action, so each one will get an action during a round, or move during a round if they choose to do so. My hope is to keep the action on the table moving around the map and remove the slowed down feeling of it. That is what we've got for this week for game progress, development progress. I'm sure there's plenty more to come. Look out for a battle report next week or the week after with one of the guys, Nettle. We'll go in depth with gameplay to show off the game loop, how it'll look and feel. Make sure to check out Nettle's channel as well. That link's below. He's one of the best gamers I know, and he does playthroughs with commentary on some of the most difficult games out there. Now, if you're here this long, I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video. The rules and cards for Net City Runner are available for free down below in the description for you to play and test out. I hope you learned something. I hope you play something, like maybe my game. And I will see you next time.